From Relay FM, this is Connected, episode number 45. Today's show is brought to you by Igloo, an internet you'll actually like, Casper, because everyone deserves a great night's sleep, and App Camp for Girls. Support their crowdfunding campaign now. My name is Mike Hurley, and I'm joined, as always, by the wonderful Mr. Federico Vitici.
Why is your accent getting worse every time?
It's just I'm going for different types of Italian now. I figure I'm just gonna mix it up. I practice at home, you know.
So these are types of Italian that you made up on your own.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, hi Mike. How are you?
I am very well. How are you?
I'm well. Yeah. Thank you.
So Steven is chasing a spaceship right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's actually going to a shuttle launch.
Yeah, he's fed up with our discussions about, young stuff like music, streaming, photos,
So he's going to live on the moon.
So yeah, I decided to go to the moon and just, I'm done. And
yep.
We support your decision, Steven.
So in protest of him missing this week, we had decided to replace him with the only man that could replace him, which is the wonderful Mr. David Smith.
Evening, gentlemen. How are you?
Very well, sir. How are you?
I'm good.
Thank you so much for being here today.
That's good, though. I'm pretty sure Steven's not going to a shuttle launch because I don't think we launch those anymore.
But it's something. SpaceX,
something's going to space, and that does sound exciting. It's probably maybe more exciting than Connected, but I don't know. We'll see.
I doubt that. I really doubt that.
Well, I don't know. We have a man who makes 2,000 apps for the iPhone and the iPad here. As
true.
A guest. That's pretty exciting, if you ask me.
Yeah.
The reason that we picked David is because if you lay all of his app icons down together, they will reach the moon.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, how many apps seriously? Like 120, 50?
It's a funny question because I've probably developed something in the realm of between 60 and 100 unique apps. On the store, I have a few hundred, though, because some of those apps were things that were like content-driven, and so there's multiple instances of the same thing. But yeah, there are a few hundred on the App Store with my name on them. So,
man, that's amazing.
But I've been doing it for 7 years. It's not too crazy. I mean, that's like how many articles did you write on Mac Stories? You've just been doing it
10,000. Yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I know.
So we're going to talk about a bit about WWDC, but from the developer's perspective. You see that a little later on today in this show. But before we do that, we do have a couple of smaller topics because Federico has been doing some interesting stuff. Or we're not doing follow up this week. I've decided to take that hostage in protest.
What will Steven need to do to pay the ransom for the follow up?
That's a really good. I had not thought about that. We should come back to that.
Yeah, that's for the next week. Let's make sure we have an actual plan to bring back the follow up. Mike, I wanted to make another confession to you today. I'm using iOS 9. I told you last week, and I updated to the beta today, both on my iPhone and my iPad. So last week we talked about my usage of the Notes app on my phone and my iPad and even my Mac for those 2 times every week when I use my Mac. And so alongside the Notes app, what I've also been using is reminders on iOS 9. So listeners of Connected and readers of Mac Stories know that I've been going, back and forth for the past 2 years, reminders and Todoist. And for over a year, I used Todoist. But when iOS 9 came out 2 weeks ago, I was really curious to see the changes in reminders, because I've also started working on my review of iOS 9, and I feel like I need to know what's in the actual OS, and that includes knowing, Apple apps and the changes that they have. So in reminders, I said to myself, I want to use this app as my only to-do system for a couple of weeks. And right now, that's easy for me because in Todoist, I don't have many projects anyway. My to-do situation kind of gets crazy before September and before all the OS releases, but right now it's kind of calm and quiet, so I can easily transfer, even manually, from one app to another. So I thought, okay, I'm gonna try reminders and see what's new. And so besides the fact that iCloud Sync is really fast for me, at least right now, and I already spoke about this, about notes, changes propagate in real time. And when I launch these apps, both notes and reminders, if changes are not already there, I just need to wait like 2 seconds. So from a speed perspective, they're really, really fast, and I like that. And of course I get all these, integrations with Siri. I kind of miss the ability to say, to just like bring up Siri, especially now that I have Siri on my watch, to just say remind me to do this, and it's just saved. I don't have to use an app, or worse, on the Apple Watch, to bring up the third-party app, which is slow.
Does Todoist not do that thing where you can set up a reminders list? It doesn't do that. Okay.
No.
Because OmniFocus does that. I don't have that set up because it's not really the way that I work. But that is something you can do. You can have it. It does something weird with reminders that I don't fully understand, but you can do it that way.
Yeah. So besides these obvious kind of features that I forgot about, and now they're nice to have again. What I really like in reminders in iOS 9 is the ability to say, remind me about this, and depending on what you're looking at, you will get a special reminder in the app. And by special, I mean you will have an icon next to the reminder, and you can tap the icon to go back to the source, to where you said, or maybe where you use the share sheet to say, I want to make these a reminder. So these can be a web page in Safari, or an email message, a message from you, Myke, on the Messages app. It can be a calendar event. You can say to Siri, remind me about this, and it'll know what is this. It'll look at what's on the screen. It'll save a reminder for what you're looking at, and you will get a deep link in the Reminders app. So when the item is due, you can just tap the icon and you go back to the web page or the message or whatever, so you can complete your reminder. And what's also very nice, this works from Siri, from the new Reminders extension in the share sheet. So I save a lot of links every day. So when I'm in Safari, I can just save a link with the share sheet, and later I get this Safari icon in the reminder, and I can tap it and I will go back to the web page in Safari, which is nice. But what's also really nice right now is that even apps that, and now I want to ask David about this, even apps that haven't been updated for iOS 9, if you say remind me about this, and if that app, third-party app, already uses handoff, so the NS User Activity API, it's already capable of exposing this activity to reminders. So if you go to Twitterrific right now in the iOS 9 beta, and even if you don't have an iOS 9 build of the app, look at a profile screen in Twitterrific and say remind me about this, and you will get a special Twitterrific reminder, and you will get the app icon in the reminder. You tap the app icon and you will go back to that specific screen in Twitterrific, which is really, really handy. David, what's the deal with NS User Activity, if you know about this?
So the user activities are the reason that works, and the reason I think Apple did a very smart thing in the way they structured user activities, is that they are very generic. That it's basically just a way for an app to say, I'm in the middle of doing something. If some other app would be interested in that thing, here's some information that will be relevant to them if they wanted to recreate where I am. And so that works for handoff. That makes sense where, if you're on your phone and you're looking at a particular page, your Mac can know about it, or your Mac or your watch can know about it, or you can go all the way around, because it's just saying, here's something that the user is doing right now. And so the reason it works even there, if they haven't even supported iOS 9 yet, is just any app that exposes those types of hooks into their application that says, here's some interesting things that the users do in my app, will be able to just very easily hook into that and, pull it up. And so that's when they say, I want to do this, like this becomes more specific than just open the app. It's this thing that I'm doing. And so that's why it works there. But it's a pretty straightforward mechanism. And I think a lot of the stuff Apple's doing in iOS 9 and on the watch ties into that same kind of user activity stuff. And you can do a whole lot with it as a result.
Nice. So yeah, I've been doing this capturing information from apps a lot with reminders, and it's super handy because I'm looking at apps every day. Whether it's news that I need to cover or messages that I need to remember. So for instance, my girlfriend asks me a lot of stuff every day, and if I don't save this information, I forget. So just being able to save a message and you get the title of the last message from a conversation into the reminder, and then you can tap the messages icon in the reminder, you go back to the conversation. That's awesome. And so combining these, I can bring up Siri and say, remind me about this. And I can use the share sheet with the extension to, maybe because I cannot, talk to Siri in public. It's been very useful to capturing like my state, what I'm doing, and remembering later what I need to do. I find this communication, with reminders and apps, and there's deep links you can tap, you go back straight into the app and into the relevant section. That's awesome. And like, it's only been 2 weeks, I already see the utility for like the kind of stuff that I do. I'm not sure if, of course, third-party developers won't be able to bring up their own apps with Siri. I don't know if they will be able to do the same with the share sheet alone. So if they can build an extension that looks at the activity, I'm not sure they can do that. So that's one of the things that I really like in reminders. And in general, I feel like it's too soon to tell, maybe. I don't think I can say, yeah, I want to switch to reminders because of these and these. It's two very nice features, but I don't know. Right now I can say that I'm satisfied with the iCloud sync, and this stuff with the deep links and activities. It's really well done. But I want to see how it progresses, with the iOS 9 betas, to see how it works. I can say that I've been doing. I've been working well. I've been completing my tasks. I'm not too behind with my inbox and my to-do list. So, as a basic app, it is working. Is it better than Todoist? I don't know. We'll see.
Do you not find that, like, you sometimes feel like it's a little too simple? Like there are things that you want to do but can't do?
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like it's too basic for me. Like. And I talked about this last year when I switched to Todoist. I don't think reminders is the kind of app that can scale when you become too busy. Like last year, it was crazy for me to cover the launch of iOS 8 and to organize all the stuff, multiple projects, and I need to keep track of different types of articles that I need to publish. So I don't think reminders is meant for that kind of management when you have too much stuff going on and too many people you have to deal with, because these are just lists that you can share with other people if you want to, but maybe there's a possibility that this better integration with apps can kind of make reminders a little more flexible. I don't know, it's very early to tell, so I'm skeptical that it can be. Of course, it won't be as powerful as Todoist, where I can create filters, I can hook up with the app with IFTTT, and there's a Python API that I can use. You can do crazy things with Todoist. That's not possible with reminders, but there's this new stuff with Siri and activities that's really cool. So I will keep using it this summer. That's for sure. Maybe until things get really crazy with work, I will keep using reminders. So we'll see.
Yeah, I found actually I've started using reminders a lot myself since I got the watch, because it's not replacing my like OmniFocus like project-based to-dos, but the reminders app seems to be really, really good at is like have your working list of not like the things that are long-term and that you need to worry about over several weeks or months, or trying to like organize something big and complicated, but for just the small actual things that are like where they really are reminders, not to-dos and not like tasks. It's amazing to pick up my watch and just say, remind me to do this when I get home, or those types of things, and then they're just right there. Like I never had to open an app. I didn't have to take anything out. So I found that I'm starting to use reminders a lot more for that kind of thing, and it's just sort of like running in parallel for these types of much more sort of just tasks that I'm expecting to do probably in the next few hours, rather than things I'll be working on over the course of several months.
And Federico, you also purchased something.
Yeah,
you did a mic.
Yeah, I did a mic. Yeah, that's a move. So I wanted to kind of bring Bluetooth to my car because I have an old, like very basic cable setup. So there's an audio jack coming out from my dashboard, and I just plug in my iPhone and listen to music and podcasts. So I knew that there was a way to kind of retrofit, cars like mine with some sort of Bluetooth accessories. So I went to Amazon and I got these Aukey. It's called Aukey, Key, Aukey device. It's like a little puck that you stick to your car's dashboard, and it's also like a little knob that you can twist to change volume, change tracks, and of course there's a button in the middle that you can press to bring up Siri, answer and voice calls, and also to do a bunch of other interactions with your iPhone. So
this is not CarPlay.
This is not CarPlay. This is just basic. What's the standard? A2DP for Bluetooth. It's basic Bluetooth communication with for iOS. And well, the second reason. So the first reason is that I wanted to have Bluetooth in my car because I always struggle to kind of plug and unplug when I'm driving, and maybe I need to answer a phone call, and it's super inconvenient. So the second reason is that in iOS 9, and specifically in reminders, there's a way to create reminders for when you get and when you leave your car. And so I was curious because there's no documentation from Apple. You can only say, remind me to do this when I get in my car, or remind me to do this when I leave my car. And reminders will instead of having like a due date or like a location reminder, it will create this new car reminder. But Apple doesn't say whether it's only for CarPlay devices or if it works with Bluetooth devices that it recognizes, right, as being a car Bluetooth device. So you can buy like a generic one from Amazon like I did and say, remind me when I'm in my car, and iOS will know that that's a Bluetooth device that you keep in your car, and it will fire off the reminder. So I really wanted to try this because there's a lot of stuff that I need to do as soon as I get in my car. Like sometimes I need to take out the trash, and there's no what's the name of when you leave the trash, the garbage area. It's not near my house. I need to drive there, so I need to keep the trash in the backseat of my car. And sometimes I forget, like I just drive by and I keep the trash in the backseat of my car. And of course, it's always it's not a good solution to forget to leave the trash in the proper garbage disposal area. So there's stuff that I need to do when as soon as I enter my car. Like for instance, with Bluetooth, I could remember to call my mom when I'm in my car. I'm driving somewhere, and I can just call my mom or some other person. So I wanted to try this today. I got the device, I set it up, it was easy enough, and I tried it with iOS 9 Beta 1, so it was my afternoon. The Beta 2 was still not out, and they didn't work. I got a bunch of people on Twitter saying that even if it's not CarPlay, these new car reminders in iOS 9 will have been working for them with generic Bluetooth devices like mine. It wasn't working for me, but I also got other people saying, yeah, it's been buggy for me as well, it doesn't work. And so it's not clear right now whether these new types of reminders for getting in and leaving your car will work, even if you don't have CarPlay. I really don't want to buy a CarPlay device because they're too expensive, and because I have that kind of dashboard that it's like it's an all-in-one setup. So I would need to go to a mechanic to kind of basically change the entire thing, and to kind of put in one of those aftermarket Pioneer devices. I don't want to do that.
Don't do that just for reminders.
I don't, yeah, of course I don't want to do, it would be nice to test them. So maybe the beta 2, I will try again tomorrow. Maybe it will work, maybe it won't. Maybe there's some more digging that I need to do to understand what types of devices it'll work with. Or maybe Apple will clarify this, eventually. I don't know. It will be great. It would be great for me to have this. I don't know if it works with the All-Key device that I bought.
Well, there you go. I look forward to hearing back. Maybe you can record next week from the car trying to add reminders.
I think it sounds terrible. There's a built-in microphone in the device, but I don't think it
perfect.
sounds...
That's all we need.
Oh yeah, sure. It's like a little dot in the device. I'm not sure that the quality would be great, Mike.
I'm calling you from the car.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds great. So professional.
I'm turning this into a theatrical thing over here now. All right, let's dig into some of this developer stuff. But before we do that, let's do a quick thanks to our friends over at Casper for sponsoring this week's episode of Connected. Casper is an online retailer of premium mattresses that you can get for a fraction of the price of what you will find in stores. The mattress industry has always been forcing consumers into paying really high prices because they use dealers and showrooms and resellers and all that kind of stuff. But what Casper does is it takes all of that away and passes those savings directly to the consumer. For example, mattresses can often cost well over $1,500, but Casper mattresses cost between $500 for a twin, $750 for a full size, $850 for a queen, and $950 for a king-sized mattress. And all of Casper's mattresses are made in America, and they have developed their own new hybrid mattress that combines premium latex foam with memory foam. And these two technologies come together for better nights and brighter days because it has just the right sink and just the right bounce. A Casper mattress will provide you with long-lasting supportive comfort, but also they're very, very resilient. Now, buying mattresses online kind of seems crazy for so many reasons, because they're shipping them to you, which is one, but they actually ship them in these boxes, which is crazy. So like this box arrives, which is impossibly small. You just can't, you think, they're obviously, this is some other thing and they're going to send me a mattress later. But no, you open the box and the mattress is all tucked away in there, and you unfold it out and you open this bag, and like all of the air just gets sucked into the mattress and it starts to kind of come to life. It's a very interesting thing to see. It kind of like breathes its way back to life again. It's kind of crazy. I don't really know how they do that. It must be some sort of incredible robots that get those mattresses in those boxes. But Casper also understands that buying a mattress online is an interesting thing because, people are used to thinking, you go to the showroom and you try it out. But when you're going to a showroom and trying out a mattress, you're like sitting down on it, you're in your regular clothes, you've got your shoes on, so you're not laying on it, you like sit down for a minute or two, and then you kind of say, yep, that's the one that I want. That kind of seems crazy because you're going to be sleeping on this thing every night for years. So what Casper does is they will ship the mattress to you, and it's completely risk-free. So you buy the mattress that you want, they ship it to you, and they give free delivery, but they also do free returns within a 100-day period. So if you've been sleeping on it and you think it's not the right one for you and you want to change it, you can do that. Or you want to return it, you can do that. It's completely risk-free for 100 days because Casper want you to enjoy your mattress. So they do that for you. It's really, really cool. Listeners of this show can get $50 off towards any mattress purchase by visiting casper.com/connected and use the code CONNECTED. It's get you $50 off. Terms and conditions apply. See the site for details. Thank you so much to Casper for supporting this show and all of Relay FM. So, Underscore, you were at WWDC. We were there together, but you actually attended the real conference.
I did.
And so you've been in there, you've seen session videos, you've been to keynotes and stuff like that. Now that we're a couple of weeks removed, as a developer, what is your overall impressions of the announcements? Like, are you happy with them? Were you left wanting? Does it feel better or worse than last year?
So I think there's two kinds of WWDCs that I've been to, and I've been fortunate enough to go for the last 7 of them. Where some years it's sort of like they're like laying the foundations, like they're digging everything up and laying the concrete and build it and putting stuff onto developers that are like foundational for things to come. But in the near term, can be a little bit crazy for as a developer. It was like there's all these things that you have to adopt, all these things you need to take care of. And you have those years, like those foundational years. And then you have years that are more like, I don't know, architectural years that are just like, you have this foundation, now build a house on it. And this year, I would say, is the latter, where we got, Apple's been making all these investments over the last couple of years into technologies and things that, as long as we've been sort of keeping up with them, this year we just like, here's a whole bunch of stuff that just makes things better and easier and simpler, but you're not going to have to tear anything down and rebuild it. And so I like those years as a developer, as somebody who makes my living making these apps. Like, it's nice to not have to feel like I'm like, sometimes I come into this part of the summer and just look at all my apps and it's like, all right, well, like burn them all down and let's get started. Because that's just, what Apple does. Like, last year it was size classing and all the very flexible layout stuff. And the year before was iOS 7, which, was a radical visual and design departure. Whereas this year it's just like things are just better and things are nice. And so I like years like this because, I'll probably enjoy my summer a bit more.
Yeah, I guess it's nice to have this year after 2 crazy years. Like, for as you say, like burn it down and start again kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's the benefit of the way Apple tends to roll too. Like, you can very easily often look back at what Apple's been doing, and we only get to see sort of their plans once a year, a couple times a year, and so we have these few little data points that go along where we're like, okay, they're going from here to there to there, but when you look back and you see all the stuff they've done to get to here, it's clearly was intentional. It's not like they're accidentally, stumbling upon, that they introduced auto layout and they introduced size classes, and then they made, introduced big phones, and now they're doing split view on the iPad. Like, there's all these very clear linear progressions, and so it's like, it's reassuring when we have these years, but it's also nice because it's like, if you've been making the investments early, for the last couple of years, then you finally get a payoff year where it's like everything should be roughly, in place for you.
What have been some of your favorite announcements, additions, or changes that came out of WWDC that either make your work a little easier or will allow you to take your apps further?
I think the most exciting things for me this year are all on the watch, pretty much. There's a few things on iOS that are nice. Like, there's a new layout controlled stack view, which will make some of the things I do a lot easier. There's a few other sort of bits and pieces, but for me, the biggest things that I'm most excited about are on the watch, and basically making it a full development platform now. Like, before, you could do stuff and you could make watch apps, but I mean, anyone who's used watch apps in their current state knows they're not particularly capable. There's not a lot of things they really can't do. They're not autonomous, and so coming into this summer and being able to look at it as like the watch is now a platform in its own right is very exciting to me.
You went to the sessions and the labs and stuff like that, I assume, this year. What was your overall opinion? I mean, for much as you can say, I don't even know if you're allowed to talk about those things in any way. But if you are, what was your kind of feeling about that sort of stuff this time around?
Yeah, I mean, I think they continue to do the actual, like, the logistical and like performance parts of the conference are always really well done. It's one of the better run conferences I've ever been to, especially given its size and its scope. That it's 5,000 people dealing with all kinds of things, and many of which I'm sure are being kind of pulled together at the last minute. But all the sessions were really good. I tend to actually not go to that many sessions these days. I tend to spend most of my days in the labs. I think it's like I've been doing it long enough that I realized like I can always watch the video of the thing.
Yeah.
But it's very rare that I'll have an opportunity to sit down with an Apple engineer and talk to them about what I'm doing. And so even if I don't really have good questions, I'll just find somebody and sit down and talk to them. And it helps you read between the lines a lot better, I find. If you start to have, you have these conversations and you ask them, oh, I see you did this. Why did you do that? And sometimes their answers are things that are helpful to get you a sense of context. And so I do spend a lot of that, but it's nice. And it's kind of a crazy week, but it's always a very good week. And logistically, everything always works, which is nice, but definitely come home completely exhausted.
So David, as the developer of the excellent Parameter++, what do you think of the changes in HealthKit and the enhancements? And I know that your app maybe won't necessarily use these new features in HealthKit for developers, but still, I think I look up to you as one of the experts on these developer technologies. So I kind of wanted to know what you think of the HealthKit changes in iOS 9.
Sure. So I think the biggest there's sort of two categories of changes that they did to HealthKit, and I am expecting to make use of a lot of these this summer. But they added a bunch of stuff in to the framework in terms of on the data collection side. You can now track reproductive health and UV exposure and a few other new categories of data, which is nice. It expands out what HealthKit can do. I think there's a new thing for bulk deleting of entries and kind of keeping track of clearing out data, which is useful, but isn't really a functional improvement. And then I think on the second side, and the thing that makes me most excited is they expanded out HealthKit that it's now available on the watch as well. And so for me, I use my watch's primary function beyond, I guess, telling the time for me is doing activity tracking. And so being able to now properly go back and forth with HealthKit onto the watch is a huge win, that I can now access the same kind of APIs and the same data sources that I could from, on my phone, I can now access on my watch. And so I can, surface data. And this is in Pedometer++, the problem I have now is dealing with the data issue between, there's now an activity tracker in my phone and there's an activity tracker in my watch. And they're independent. Each device has its own, step counter essentially. And so they'll each have different estimates for how many steps you took. And that's exactly kind of the problem that HealthKit is designed to solve, where it's its whole reason for being is a place to, gather all this data together, aggregate it together in a reasonable way, and then present it to applications for, display. And so the fact that they're now bringing that HealthKit, so HealthKit's everywhere now, I can now show that data, and I can integrate data collected from the watch with data collected from your phone. Theoretically, I could also integrate data collected from any other device that you may be counting steps with or doing anything like that. And so I think it's going to maybe be able to, we can finally present a cohesive view that's consistent across all the different places that you might look for that data. And so that's pretty, for me, that's a very exciting part about HealthKit, because I can open up, there's a whole lot of health and fitness apps that I'm in the early stages of, thinking through or starting to code up, because I think it's, it's a really fun place to work. And now all kinds of things are now possible that just weren't possible before.
So David, tell me about the WatchOS, because I feel like some conflicting feelings about this. Some people say that it's just what they were looking for. Some people say that it's still not enough. How do you feel about WatchOS, and what do you think are some of the key parts of it?
Yeah, so at first blush, I think people who say that who are maybe disappointed about it are probably people who weren't invested in it, into WatchKit before, would be my suspicion. Because if you've been doing WatchKit apps before, what they did is incredibly pragmatic, where essentially they took WatchKit apps before, where you had the thing that runs on the watch, which is just the UI part, just the part the user sees and touches, was running on the watch, and all the logic was running on the phone, but it was running in an extension, separate from the actual application itself. So it was in this own little bundle, and all they did in watchOS, to a first approximation, is they took that logic bundle, and now you can run it on the watch. And so if you have any existing applications, if you have any code, if you've been going along with this, a lot of your apps will just be better in watchOS 2 with almost no work, because they kept everything the same. Like, they didn't just say, oh, that WatchKit thing you've been doing for the last 6 months, just throw that all away. We have this whole new thing. Like, they just said, we're going to take what we've been building on, and the same paradigms and the same approaches to things are just going to map over to watchOS 2. But now they run actually on the watch. And so which has two major benefits. I mean, the first one is, I think the one that most people are going to appreciate, is that everything is just faster now, because everything isn't being streamed over from your phone. So there's not weird Bluetooth issues. There's not weird, just like latency issues, all the stuff that make watch apps right now cumbersome at best and unusable at worst. Like, a lot of that just goes away. And now we can do a lot more because they're running autonomously on the watch. You no longer need your phone to be right next to you in order to do things. I mean, there's even stuff now where your watch is going to be able to do basic networking over a wireless network that it knows. So if your phone isn't even nearby, or like you go to work and you leave your phone at home, you can still actually do some stuff on your watch because your watch knows that wireless network. And it just makes the watch a much more capable device. And then they brought onto the watch a whole host of like the frameworks, like I was just saying with HealthKit, but they did the same thing with CoreMotion, PassKit, some MapKit changes. Like, there's all kinds of these basic frameworks that are the building blocks of iOS apps are now available on the watch. And so you can do a lot of things. And I mean, I think for me, it's exactly what I was hoping for, because I've been spending a lot of time working on WatchKit over the last 6 months. And so they took the approach of like, okay, if you've been making an investment there, now it pays off. Now you can take all the things you just built and just make them better.
So I want to ask you about the iPad and
of course
split views and slide over. So have you been looking at, so a lot of people have been saying if you paid attention to Apple in the past 2 years and size classes last year, you knew that this was coming. So hopefully you will be ready to support these new multitasking features on the iPad from day one, because if you have been paying attention, you already done most of the work. What have you been doing with your apps? Did you anticipate this type of feature coming to the iPad? Are you ready to support multitasking and split view and this new stuff?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, it's. I think I wasn't sure if we would get split screen on the iPad. It was something that's been rumored for a long time, and exactly the form that we got it is fairly consistent with what like the old early rumors of even seems like a year ago. We had a whole bunch of rumors about split screen coming to the iPad, but I think the biggest thing that honestly has probably paved the way for split screen being really relatively easy for a lot of developers to do, and slide over especially, is just the fact that there's the iPhone 6 Plus, which from a technical perspective, it was sort of the first device that fit in this really that it didn't feel like an iPhone in the same way. Obviously, it is an iPhone, but in the sense that it was really bigger. It wasn't just like going from the 4S to the 5, where like the screen got taller. It's like, okay, well, it's just taller, and like a lot of apps are just a list of things, so you just make the list bigger. And then the 6 is bigger, but it wasn't quite as radical of a change for me, at least in my coding work. But the 6 Plus, if you wanted to really take advantage of it, like it's a big screen with a lot of things, and so you really, whether you wanted to or not, you had to kind of adopt the size classing and dynamic adaptive layout stuff. And so now when you look at what they're doing on the iPad and split screen, it's like, well, in some ways, when the app is running split screen, like split screen landscape is conceptually in a lot of ways just like running like 2 6 Plus apps at the same time next to each other. And slide over is essentially just running a, like say like an iPhone 6 or a 5S app on the side, as on the sidebar that just happens to be really tall. And so a lot of that stuff is pretty straightforward to do if you've been keeping, if your app is updated for the 6 Plus, there's a very good chance that adding support for split screen is going to be, relatively straightforward. Taking full advantage of it is probably going to be a slightly different thing. That's always the case where like you can make the app fit on the screen and display reasonably, but you always have to get into the questions of would you display or adapt your interface differently if it's in split screen mode versus if it's in full screen mode versus if it's running on an iPhone. But technically, it's reasonably straightforward.
How much do you use an iPad personally?
Not at all.
Yeah, see, this is interesting. Do you think that that's going to change? Is there potential to change? Like when you see these, because I've been talking about this. I never used an iPad. Now I use one every day, happily.
Still using your iPad, Myke? Okay.
Yep. And Federico, you're going to be very happy with me. There are some times where I'm doing something, maybe I've got my iPhone or whatever, and I'm like, this would be easier on the iPad. I've had that thought. So, I'm enjoying my time with it now. I actually quite like the big screen, and I really like, and I just cannot wait to have all of the apps that I use support the split screen stuff.
Nice. Look at you, Myke.
It's the tricky thing I always find with the iPad is if it's like when I work like with the job I do, like I kind of have to do it on a Mac because there is no Xcode for the iPad. Like it's a my actual development environment is on a Mac, and like I work on a big 27-inch Retina display and have a dozen windows open at a time, and so that type of work I don't think I could do on an iPad. And so an iPad for me would probably end up then falling into the category of like for like entertainment or more sort of like light casual uses. And it's always felt like my iPhone is better at that because it's always with me. It's tiny. I don't have to keep things in sync or make sure stuff's in 2 places. It's like it's always just there. It's always in my pocket. And so I always end up like, I've tried like having iPads around the house, and so like maybe they'll be available. If they're available, like when I'm sitting down to look at something, I'll just look at it on my iPad. But it just seems to never really have clicked for me. But it's and like in split view is nice, but it falls into that category of like if you're using your iPad for like productive things, and the work you're doing is possible to do on an iPad, it certainly seems to make it better. And like that part of it's kind of nice, but I'm probably just good. If I'm going to be being productive, I'll be doing it on my Mac. And if I'm being unproductive, I will be unproductive on my phone, probably still.
I've never fully reconciled in my mind how I feel about this, but I just find it interesting that a lot of indie developers that I know don't use iPads. And it just makes me question if that is an issue for iPad development. That if you don't use the device, then maybe that people don't understand how to properly think about it. I don't know. Like I'm not saying that it is that way or the other, but it's just always an interesting thing to me.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a problem, and honestly, it's probably it's one of the things that I imagine. It's like there's 2 things that have probably slowed down in some ways, like true, genuine innovation on the iPad. And if those like the 2, like, and I'm not saying that isn't happening, but I think there's things that are like a drag on that and slow it down. And one of them is just like the economics of the App Store in general, and like the fact that to really make a full rich iPad app takes more work than an iPhone app in a lot of ways, or at least in some ways. And the App Store isn't great at rewarding that necessarily. And the other is that it just doesn't seem it fits in. The iPad is really powerful at it's really powerful and effective for a narrower group of people than the iPhone. And I just sort of by definition from that isn't gonna there's a lot of people who are developers but who fall into that category of not really having a good home for it, or for whom it's a device that's purely just like for watching videos on or like reading news and things. And so I do worry that, or as I know for sure, I'm not really able to take full advantage of it, and I'm not doing things on it that I probably would if I used it all the time. But I'm not sure what Apple can do to turn that around, because it's a very sort of chicken and an egg problem of there are things that are keeping me from doing it, and because things are keeping me from doing it, I'm less able to do those things in the first place. But it definitely is something that's weird, and I'm sure I make a lot of assumptions in my iPad apps that are probably not 100%, but I've tried before to force myself to use it more, but it never really works because I'm just get so used to doing things on my phone that it's always going to be more convenient and less of a hassle.
Developers should consider using Xcode on the Mac to actually program, and editorial on the iPad to write documentation for their apps. So they can use a little bit of both, and they can get used to the iPad, and they can start using Markdown automation on the iPad. So it could be an idea.
You should start a campaign, Federico.
Write your documentation on the iPad.
Yep. You can do this. This is all on you now.
No,
yep.
Please don't launch one of your hashtags again. Don't do one of those campaigns, because people are just gonna keep mentioning me on Twitter. And please don't. I don't know, Myke.
Hashtag.
You ruin my life on
I've
a
got
weekly
one.
basis.
I've got one. Documentici.
Oh my god.
Perfect.
There you go. Hashtag Documentici. That's
so
what
does a developer need to do if they start writing documentation on the iPad?
Take a screenshot and
use
the hashtag Documentici, and then they can join the campaign for iPad documentation.
Okay. Well, I will get more tweets thanks to you, Myke. I hope.
I'm improving your brand engagement scores.
Thank you. What does this mean in clout score?
7.
Okay, cool. That's good. That's good, right? That must be good. Yeah.
I want to talk about the iOS 9 public beta, because that's something that we haven't really spent much time talking about, and I think that there's some interesting ramifications from that. But before we do that, this isn't really so much a sponsor. It's just something that I want to talk about, which is App Camp for Girls. App Camp for Girls is currently on a mission. In case you don't know what this organization does, they encourage girls to pursue app development as a career. They teach them how to make iPhone apps in a fun, creative summer camp program environment under the mentorship of women developers. App Camp is shifting the gender balance in our industry, and they're doing an incredible job. But they need to do more, and they want to do more. With App Camp 3.0 is what they're currently targeting right now, and they have a crowdfunding campaign that I'm going to tell you about in a minute. They want to bring this campaign to more girls in more locations. At App Camp for Girls, what girls go through a program of learning how to brainstorm, design, code, and pitch their apps in just 1 week. It's a massive confidence builder. It shows people that this is a fun and creative business, and it allows them to work with women in the industry, accomplished developers, designers, testers, support specialists, and more, whilst they're at the time at the camp. And right at the very last day, the girls pitch their applications and their ideas, and they do this in front of a panel of investors and entrepreneurs, of course, all female investors and entrepreneurs. They listen to the pitches, and then they will give encouragement and ideas for future development. Now, App Camp for Girls has grown incredibly. They started with one camp in 2013, and now they have locations in Portland, Seattle, Vancouver, and Canada, and there are at least 4 new locations being considered for 2016. Every camp that they do has had a waiting list so far, and they also want to get to the point where they're able to build more capacity so they can reach all of the girls and all of the locations who want to be a part of this program. But this is where they need your help. To achieve these ambitious plans of scaling App Camp, they need the support of everyone who wants to see more girls and women in tech. Your donations will buy equipment, recruit and train volunteers, and build the curriculum. Without the support of this community, App Camp for Girls would not be possible. If you are listening to this and you believe in this, and you all should, I really, really would love if you would give them some money. This is so important that they are able to try and get the money that they need, and it's down to you to do that. Give as little or as much as you can. They have an Indiegogo campaign running right now to help them get the funding that they need. If you go to, this is a tricky URL, but it'll be in the show notes as well. It'll direct you straight there, or you can Google for App Camp for Girls Indiegogo, but it's ac4g.net/relay 4 appcamp. So AC4G, so App Camp for Girls, ac4g.net/relay for App Camp. It'll have a link in the show notes. You can click it there, give what you can. Thank you very much. Okay, so the iOS 9 public beta. So if I'm right, guys, this is in July, right? This is going to be coming out?
Should be. I think so, yeah.
David, as a developer, does this terrify you a little bit?
It isn't great. It's not a particularly fuzzy and warm feeling. It is, I wouldn't say terrifying, but like,
he's never terrified. David doesn't know what be. I mean, with all your apps.
yeah, I have no fear. But like, and on the plus side, it theoretically should mean that iOS 9, when it ships, is more stable and better for customers generally. Like, obviously, what do Apple is doing this for the obvious reason that if they have more people who are not developers using their beta software before it gets released to the wider audience, that hopefully they will catch more bugs, that things will ultimately be more stable, it will identify issues earlier in the development cycle rather than like having to catch them, in September. They can catch them in July. Like, that part sounds great. It's, there are a few things that are always a little bit terrifying about it though. And obviously the biggest of which is like people who aren't developers will now be running my software on on a beta OS, and any shortcomings in my application that they see will potentially, in their mind could reflect poorly on my app rather than on the OS. Hopefully, they would be aware of that. Like, if they're running iOS 9 and it's a beta, that if things crash, if things don't work, like that may not be my fault. But there's this ongoing. The biggest fear I think I probably have is that, and you see this happen often where something will change in a beta OS. That means that like your app will just crash at launch every time. Anyone who runs it, because like there's some weird thing that it's usually they're an easy fix or a very basic thing to do, but that's the case. And if someone then thinks that like my app is broken, goes to the App Store, writes a 1-star review, like, that's problematic. And so like that's the part that makes me a little bit nervous. Like, overall, it's kind of a mixed feeling. I think there's a few things Apple could do to make that less scary, like making so, like, for example, if you're running the beta OS, you can't submit reviews in the App Store would be nice, or something like that. But generally speaking, I think Apple is doing it for the right reason. All last year we were all complaining about iOS 8 and how buggy it was, or whether like, are they really like, the things seem a little bit more broken than sometimes we would like. And so like, if they're doing something like this, like getting more people on it, like, that's them answering that question, it seems. So like, while it makes me nervous, I think it's probably overall a good thing.
Like, obviously there are implications for users, right? Battery life, instability, that kind of stuff. As well as it just being issues as a developer. Like, there are people that are going to install this that are going to end up being very unhappy, and I'm going to assume there will not be a simple downgrade path. Like, you are kind of stuck, is what I would assume.
It's probably the same as most iOS betas, where you can restore your phone, and it'll go back to the previous one typically.
Mm-hmm.
But which is obviously not a straightforward and nice thing to do. You don't. You're restoring from a backup and all kinds of awkward things. But hopefully also by the time it gets to the public, like, we just got beta 2 today, and it seems, I have it on a test device and it seems reasonable. Like, my guess is by the time Apple goes public with it, like, we're probably going to be talking about beta 3, beta 4, which maybe is reasonable in that way. Like, the battery life may not be as good, there'll be some instabilities, but like, if I imagine, I'm sure Apple's being thoughtful about this and doing it in a way that they'll be able to, like, what they're showing there is not like it's a release candidate. It's not, which wouldn't really at that point be, but they're doing something with it.
Another thing that is, like, as well as people like rating your app badly or whatever, or complaining about it, I assume that you would probably expect to see increased support during this period of time. Like, or there could be a potential for that in some instances.
Yeah, and though honestly, like that side of it, like the people coming directly to me and saying like I'm having this, I'm running the iOS 9 beta and I'm having this problem, like for me that is completely is utterly invaluable. Like I love that because either one of two things has happened. Either it's like it's an issue I'm aware of that I've fixed or I'm about to fix, in which case I can just tell them that like, hey, it's a known issue, sorry. Or they've discovered something that I haven't. And like that's the whole point in the first place of them running it, is like if they find this weird case where on the new OS something breaks, like I'd much rather hear from it from like a limited group of people, because especially like the thing that's kind of honestly in some ways scarier as an iOS developer now is like it's a wonderful thing that we have where iOS adoption is like ridiculously fast. I think for iOS 8, we had almost 50% of people running it within like a week or a week and a half or something. Like it is like mind-bending how fast that happens. But like the scary part of that is if something's broken, suddenly like half my customers are dealing with a broken issue for a week before I can get an app through app review. And so, like, in some ways, that pace can be kind of a scary thing, too. And so, like, if they can catch it early, like, I'll take that. I'm overall, like I said, it's a weird thing. And I think I'm very curious to see who is going to be the typical person who's going to want to participate in the beta program. Like, is this people wanting to... like just kind of like people who are super techie and like would listen to Connected but aren't developers, like that kind of person who really is engaged and likes this kind of stuff but isn't able to get it through the developer program? Is it like just kids wanting to show off to their friends? Like I don't know who's that person going to be, and I think depending on which demographic it ends up actually being will have a pretty substantial impact on who how impactful it actually is to a developer.
No, I think that there are some interesting avenues to consider of stuff that Apple could do or maybe should do to help make this process easier for developers as well, because it will have an impact. So like sure. I wonder, should they be able, or should they stop people from being able to leave reviews during this period if they join the beta? Maybe that would probably be a great help to you, right?
Yes. I mean, I think that is the single biggest thing that would seem, and it just seems like it makes sense that like if you open the App Store on a beta OS, that you can't leave reviews. And maybe that's a bit of an odd thing for the customer. We're like, well, why can't I do that? Like, I want to test everything out. I want to test how I can leave 1-star reviews. But I think that like things like that make a lot of sense to me, where it's just like, I would love if you opened up the App Store on a beta OS and you went to the review screen, instead of it saying like, we don't allow leaving of reviews from beta OSs. If you have an issue, please contact your developer. And like Apple has my support email, like it's part of iTunes, of my App Store page, and they just have a big button that says like contact developer. They hit a button, pops up a mail sheet with the information about their device, and we can go from there. Like that would be amazing for me. As a way to kind of focus that, let's like focus the problems into a constructive place, because inevitably there will be problems. And so if Apple can do whatever they can to funnel people towards like a productive output, that would be great.
Usually during this period, so say like between 7 and 8, if there is a crash that's happening in your app in 8, but we're currently in the 7 cycle or whatever, are you able to fix that?
It's very situational. Sometimes you can. The awkward thing is until probably I think it's the second Tuesday in September typically, we won't be able to submit apps that are like linked against iOS 9, that use the new tools, that take advantage of the new stuff. And so if there's a problem that would require that like Apple has made some change in a way that like the only way to fix it is to use the new stuff to fix it, you are just stuck. You can't do anything to fix it. Like sometimes there are weird workarounds and things you can do, or the issue is just oftentimes the issue is more that the new OS exposed a bug that was already there that you can work around. But it is definitely in a weird, awkward place you find yourself where people are running software that you can't directly fix in a lot of ways, because other than putting them on test flight, I suppose, and sending them beta builds of the app, you're stuck with whatever the shipping version of your app is until September.
Do you think that should change?
I don't know how they could do it in a reasonable. It would seem a really awkward thing to have multiple versions of binary submitted to the App Store. I mean, essentially we have that with the test flight process, where we can up to 1,000 people. I think we could send testing builds to, and my suspicion is that it'll cover most cases. Hopefully the beta. I mean, honestly, I'm hopeful that the beta process isn't a tremendously wide audience, that it isn't, there's not going to be, 50 million people running the iOS 9 beta. Hopefully it's, a few 100,000 maybe, or something like that, where more likely than not, given for any particular app, the number of people who are having a particular problem is relatively small and enough that you could deal with it on a one-off basis. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, that would just make things really complicated if I was trying to manage not only my shipping store version that most people see, then there's another version that I've shipped to customers through the store but isn't part of that same process. I think it would just make things more complicated, because the reality is it's only really for about 3 months or 2 months, so it'll probably just work itself out.
Federico, have you heard anything about the limits of people that can get into the beta?
No, not at all. And in fact, I don't even know what the numbers for the Yosemite beta last year were. I have no idea.
Was that 1 million?
I don't know. Was it 1 million people on Yosemite beta? I don't know. I think you need to sign up on a special Apple webpage.
It was beta.apple.com. There is a page where you can sign up.
And you can say, I want to be able to test betas from you eventually, and then Apple will decide if you can participate in the beta program. But I don't know if they have any public numbers when it comes to the number of users that they want to enable in the open beta. That's something that I wanted to bring up in the when David mentioned test flight. So in the past 2 weeks, and this is of course something that will stop being a new trend very soon, but a few developers already have iOS 9 betas for their apps, that some of them wanted me to start playing around with these betas on iOS 9. And because test flight still doesn't allow developers to upload builds for linked against iOS 9, I've seen after many months invitations to download apps from Hockey, Crash Lyrics, and all these services that I stopped using a while ago. And now in these past 2 weeks, because we're in a sort of limbo with test flight, I've been trying to use these services again. And my God, I remember, I realized how much better test flight is than all these services that you need to install a certificate on your device, go to Safari, and it's just, this... I think test flight is much better as a user experience. It's just you download an app from the App Store and you don't need to care about anything else. They got the orange dots, which you don't like, Mike.
I hate the dots.
But it is a much better experience for the user. So in the past 2 weeks, I'm already trying this Hockey and other services. I can't wait to download betas from test flight for iOS 9.
I'm pretty sure you can do that now. I don't know if this is a new thing, but I'm pretty sure test flight
today
supports iOS 9 beta builds. I just logged into iTunes Connect and it says you can now do iOS 9 beta builds through test flight. I don't know if that's recent.
Is that internal testers or also like the
Oh,
public?
okay, yes. So the difference between internal testers, yes, internal testers can do it, maybe not public testers.
Yeah.
So I mean, the reality is I think that's going to be coming soon. And yes, everything other than TestFlight, having now used TestFlight, is terrible. And I'm expecting I'll be waiting until I can invite public testers before I do any kind of, inviting people to look at apps and things. And I mean, at this point, it's also way early. Like, it seems kind of crazy to be sending out betas of things that can't be used properly until, September. But yeah, I definitely agree. Anything other than TestFlight, like using hockey or things like back in the day where you have to collect people's device IDs.
Oh my God.
Like every time they have like you get the email like, hey, Federico just got a new phone. So now you need to go and update it. And that was madness. And TestFlight's a lot better.
Yeah.
My main problem with those services was always that every now and then it would just stop downloading. It just wouldn't work anymore. Like apps just wouldn't download anymore, and it didn't matter what I did about it. It would just be like, oh, well, no, that just doesn't work now. It's like, okay,
yeah,
no more betas for you, Myke.
Nope.
Yeah, and there was just and as a developer, I hated that process. I mean, it was a nightmare to manage and work with, and so yeah, I mean the new TestFlight thing is great. It works just like how you'd want it to do it. Like all I need from you is your email address, and I can send you my app. Like that's exactly what I'd want to do, and so I've been very pleased with that.
I kind of wish that the TestFlight emails had the changelog for a build directly in the email instead of having to go to the TestFlight app to do what's new.
I just wish I would stop getting those emails. Like, I would just like to just get the push notification. I don't want the emails. Can I stop the emails in any way? Have you seen that, Federico?
I don't think you can. Maybe you can create like a filter or like a rule on Gmail.
Yeah, I'm going to do that because I get 2 notifications.
You could probably do it in editorial, right? Editorial can probably do that for you.
Yeah. Well, in theory, you should be able to install a Gmail Python module. And,
exactly.
But Myke, it's still so. Myke is now getting into the whole iPad automation stuff, but maybe Python is still a bit early for Myke. But you will get there eventually, Myke.
Nope.
You will come to me and you will have a need for Python, and you will say, "Look, I've come so far. Now I need to automate some crazy podcasting stuff using editorial and Python." I know that will happen, Myke.
I'm scared of snakes. This week's episode of Connected is brought to you by Igloo, the internet you'll actually like. With Igloo, you don't have to be stuck at your desk to do your work, and you don't have to be stuck at looking at something that was, basically seems like it was designed by somebody who didn't really like you because it looks so bad. This is a world that you don't have to worry about when Igloo is your intranet. You can manage your task list from wherever you want. You can do it when you're supposed to be concentrating on a meeting, but instead you just want to get some stuff done instead because the meeting's boring. Or maybe you want to share your status updates with your colleagues as you're on your way back from a sales meeting to congratulate yourself on the great deal that you've just done. Or maybe you want to work on a client's files from home or something like that whilst you're in your pajamas, because nobody will really know, because you can still be as productive in your pajamas, and you can be productive with Igloo. These days, everything is mobile, and your work should be too. But with that comes some frustrating things. Like, these days, everybody wants to use mobile services like Box and Google Drive and Dropbox because they integrate with their devices and they love them and they want to use them. But what ends up happening is the documents that should be all in one place in your company get scattered all over the place. But Igloo allow you to integrate these services into one big, easy-to-secure platform. Igloo looks fantastic too. It's really configurable. You can give it a complete rebrand to look exactly like the look and feel of your team or company, and you are also able to, with their drag and drop widget editor, to reorganize the whole platform to fit the needs of specific teams as they need them. You can also share files with your coworkers for you all to collaborate on. You can also track who has read them with read receipts. This makes sure that everybody is on the same page and ensures that everybody is looking at critical information and it can be checked on when they need to. It's time to break away from the internet you hate. Go and sign up for Igloo right now, and you can try it for free with any team of up to 10 people for as long as you want. So sign up right now at igloosoftware.com/connected. Thank you so much to Igloo for their support of this show and Relay FM. So, Taylor Swift and Apple Music. I didn't want to spend a ton of time on this because the story, like, Apple kind of ruined this for us because we didn't even get a week to complain about them.
17 hours on a Sunday.
17 hours of arguments on the internet, which were destroyed by Eddie Q. I had so many thoughts and so many notes about how Apple was evil, and then they kind of ruined it because they just gave the money. But so basically, for anybody that's not aware of this, Taylor Swift wrote an open letter to Apple criticizing Apple for the fact that they were not going to be paying people during the first 3 months, the 3-month free trial of Apple Music. They were not going to be paying artists. Apple had said previously to this that they were supposedly paying a little bit more and that kind of thing, and that all balanced it out evenly. But this wasn't enough, and Taylor was like, I think this isn't fair. I'm keeping my music off the service. I think other people should too, and I think Apple should pay. They have the ability to, etc., etc. And then, as Federico points out, 17 hours later, Eddie Q issued 3 very peculiar tweets to announce the situation that were just weirdly worded and didn't even seem to be in the right order. And that was the way that they decided to tackle this. Then Eddie made a selection of phone calls to different media outlets to explain Apple's position on this. And it seems that Apple is going to be paying some money to artists during this period, but for it basically appears to be they will be paying the industry streaming average, which is not what they will be paying after the first 3 months. So, Federico, I'm interested to know from you how you felt about this. Like, what was your stance on the fact that once Taylor spoke out, how did you feel about Apple, and now how do you feel considering that they appear to have changed their minds?
Well, my basic stance is that when you provide a service that offers content made by other people, doesn't matter whether to your users the service is free because it's a trial. If you're offering content from other people and that content is usually paid content, they get money for that, it doesn't matter, you should be paying those people. That was my basic idea. So I agreed with Taylor Swift on the principle that having a free trial that was free for the users but also a forced free trial for the artists, I agree that was very odd from Apple. I don't agree with Taylor Swift on her general thoughts on streaming and keeping her catalog of Spotify and Google Music and until today also Apple Music, but that's another topic. I think that when it comes to Apple's interests, they shouldn't use music from other people as a way to convince users to try their new Apple Music service. Because it's simply, to me, you can make tons of different arguments, and there were tons of different ideas on Twitter that the free trial, you could make it up with a higher pay rate eventually, but that's a flawed argument, because what if people don't subscribe and you cannot apply the higher rate? Then effectively you've just given away music for free. And there were other people saying, yes, but those 3 months you benefit from the promotion by Apple and the iTunes team on Twitter and Apple Music, which is another flawed argument, because there would be no promotion without the content from other people.
Well,
so,
and also exposure doesn't put food on the table.
Exposure is when you get people saying, "Look, we want you to work for free. We want you to give us your stuff for free," and you say, "Yeah, but what do I get in return?" Well, you get exposure. You should run from those people always. So my basic, as soon as I read the open letter, my basic thoughts were that Taylor Swift was right on the trial. She's still, in my opinion, misguided about streaming. I don't think the streaming scenario will play out as she imagines, but she is in the position to say, I don't care about streaming, I want people to buy my album, and she can say that, but she's an exception. But yes, I mean, it was just obvious to me that Apple was going to change its decision and to start paying artists. It seems like they reached an acceptable compromise. We're gonna pay the industry standard, because we got people here for free, and eventually we'll pay a higher rate because we can get people to pay, and we believe in the paid model. I think that's a fair compromise, because you adapt to what others are doing. So you adapt to the same rate of Google, of Spotify, and Pandora and all these other radio services. That's fair. I think it's like so many other people are obsessing over the fact that Apple is not paying the artists directly; they're paying the rights holders and the labels. But that's just the way that the music industry is structured. It just you cannot blame Apple for being part of a whole bureaucracy and a whole structure that they cannot change overnight. The fact that they've gone back to their previous decision, they're now paying, that's good. But what concerns me, so since the Apple Music introduction, there were a lot of people commented on problems in Apple Music, and those problems were some minor, some personal, and so they complained about the intro, the Drake, the Eddie Q dancing, the long demo, the developer conference. But if anything, I believe the only concern that I can come up with at this point was the decision of giving away music for free, and later, following some backlash from indie publishers in the UK and Germany and Taylor Swift, you go back and you change your mind. That's a sign of concern to me. Not Drake, not Eddie Q, not the developer keynote. That's a sign of they're trying this new game, they're trying this new service, a new landscape for Apple, music streaming, and at least in this case, they couldn't make up their mind immediately on a stance. We want to pay artists even during the free trial, and the reversal is concerning to me.
Especially the speed.
The speed. It's just, why did you need Taylor Swift on a Sunday to call up Tim Cook and say, "Look, we gotta talk about this," and then you can put together a strategy in 17 hours. Why did you need that? Why did you need that sort of kick from a popular artist in pop music to say, yeah, we were wrong? It's just that's strange. It's always strange when you do that kind of reversal so quickly. But anything else? The fate of Apple Music won't be decided by this. For as much as it sounds awful, people don't care. People want to pay. People don't want to pay, but if they want to pay, they want a good service. I think that the family option will be especially popular, because for $15 you get six people. That's something that, at least to my knowledge, no other service offers. And whether Apple Music works or not, whether it'll be a major new service for Apple, whether it will establish itself as the leading streaming service in the music industry, that will be decided by the actual service, not even by Taylor Swift, and not by the trials, not by Eddie Q making phone calls on a Sunday night. That will be decided by the service and whether the features are worthy of people's money. And that's coming in seven days. So do you know the little Majora's Mask countdown in Zelda when like the moon is crashing on Termina? It's like the little dialogue. How many hours is in 7 days? I don't know.
Many.
100 and many hours remaining. So we'll see next Tuesday.
The family plan would be a lot more appealing to me if it wasn't tied to iTunes family sharing or the iCloud family sharing.
Why?
Because I would like to pay for me and my girlfriend for Apple Music, but I can't imagine that we're going to dive into iCloud family sharing as a thing, because it just seems like a whole world of trouble for that, you know? I feel like there would be ramifications that are wider that we then have to deal with, like iTunes purchases and things like that.
It feels like you're not ready to say you're a family.
That is true. That is very true. Moving along, David, what's your opinion on the Apple Music stuff? Like, do you have any kind of differing opinions to Federico at all?
The thing that I think is most, like, the actual, like, contract negotiations are hardly, like, something that is particularly interesting, like, to think about. Like, it's always going to come down to who has the most power, who wants it more, how much they're willing to spend to get that. Like, that's just, like, I don't know, like, that doesn't particularly interest me. The part that is fascinating about this, though, is that, like, it seems there is something very fundamentally strange that, like, a major musician, like, probably one of the best known musicians now in the world, like, calling out Apple, and then, like, Apple trying, like, immediately flipping around on that, and then, like, trying to engage on Twitter with her, and like it just feels awkward. And the thing that I think about as a result is, it's like, is it indicative of, like, I started thinking about, like, Apple Connect, right? Like, this whole thing where they're, like, in with the artists and, like, super connected and, like, have the social media thing. And, like, it's an area that I think that this is not a great example of them being really connected with artists and being, like, in it in that way. And on the flip side, there's also, like, it feels a little bit like Apple, like, obviously Apple, I mean, they're the most profitable company in the world. Like, they're like, but you kind of wonder if they're, because of that, and because of what they're used to being able to do in, what they're able to do in other areas. Like, if they go into a contract negotiation at Foxconn or something, like, I imagine they can just power through that and do amazing things. But in this case, like, the artists, they need them, and they have to respect them in a way that they're just may not are being used to. And that's kind of worrying in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, right? Because I think that they walked in and they were like, hang on a minute, we revolutionized music, and then realized that the entire music industry has changed since they did that. And, like, Apple were once the internet music company, and then the entire industry changed again, and they are now just catching up at this point. And I think that threw them off guard a bit. I think that maybe Eddie Q and Jimmy Iovine thought that they could walk into these negotiations and play hardball, but it's actually turned out that the music labels, they don't need Apple anymore. And they definitely don't need Apple like they needed them 10 years ago. And I think,
don't know.
Well, what I mean is, I don't think that the music labels are crying for either. Well, let's say Apple does do something revolutionary again. The music labels don't want Apple to have all that control again. It's taken them 10 years to get away from that, and now they might be walking back into it again, which is why I don't think that they are not as strong in the negotiations as they used to be.
Well, the music labels are always happy when they see the money. So maybe they don't know it yet. But I mean, if Apple's plan works, there'll be a lot more people paying for streaming than there are people using Spotify or Google Music for free with ads. So the labels may say, we spent 10 years to get away from the iTunes store and to get away from Apple. But as soon as they see the money, I bet they will be a lot more friendly to Apple.
I don't know, man, because iTunes made a lot of money, but they didn't like that Apple had all of the power. I don't know if the record labels want to get back into that situation with them again. Because, I think one of the reasons, because this music streaming service has been rumored for years, and my understanding is the deals weren't done when they were on stage 2 weeks ago. I think that the record labels are playing hardball with Apple and they have been doing it for years because they don't want Apple to be in control again. But we'll wait and see. I mean, it's probably at this point everybody is going to get on board. I think that there's I am making a bet here that at least one major record label will not be signed up next week.
What's stronger as a desire for the music labels to get away from the free strategy of YouTube and Spotify, or to get away from Apple? Because if you consider the basic problem for these big corporations is not Apple as an evil entity, is people not paying for music. So even if they may despise the way that Apple does business, and that maybe, Apple stuff only works usually on Apple devices, even though, with Apple Music it could also be on Android, even if they may not like the way that Apple is structured, I think they don't like not having money more. So if you can convince these people that, yes, it's Apple, and yes, maybe you don't like some of their ways, but there's people using YouTube and Spotify, and you're not getting, money from those people. Now you can get some money from those people, and maybe even a lot of money, but it's with Apple. I in my mind, they won't particularly care. And
it goes back to arguing where the money comes from, which was one of your points in your article about Taylor Swift, and you were talking about concerts and stuff. The labels take a cut of that. So they're still getting the money. It's just moving where the money comes from.
And look what Apple Music has, a Connect section. Eventually it's only obvious that they will sell concert tickets inside Apple Music.
Again, so do they want all of that in Apple's ecosystem? I don't know if they. I really don't know if they do. But
if it's money,
I don't know, man. I feel like you're considering too logical a scenario.
I'm considering
for
money.
Labels.
I'm only looking at money. That's to me the only metric with these corporations. If they are happy with the money, they're also happy with the people who control the money and they give the money to.
I don't know.
I
don't know.
Well, a lot of this too, I think, comes down to who needs who more, right?
Yeah.
If Apple feels like they need to have a compelling music offering on their platform, to have a compelling platform, then Apple is going to need to pay for it, I imagine. If the record labels feel like they need Apple because they don't like whatever, that Spotify or Rdio or YouTube is taking over their business, then they'll pay a lot more for it. But it's ultimately anything like this is just going to come down to who needs who more.
But I agree, Mike. I agree with your thought on Apple kind of coming back to the music industry and realizing that, since the last time they walked in and they made the iTunes Store, and now they're kind of late to the streaming service wars, and they are realizing that there's a lot of players in town. Kind of feels like your dad going to the same club as you and realizing that kids these days use different drugs than you remembered. And that when you go to the club, then that there's that guy in his 40s and he's looking around and he doesn't know what to do, and he has a drink but he doesn't know what type of drink he's supposed to drink.
Yeah.
That's Apple with streaming services. But the question is whether they can adapt quickly, and if especially the Connect section and the Beats one, which I think very few people are talking about, if these two things are successful, they can kind of reshape the way that you think of a streaming service for music. And if they are successful, which is a big bet and a big question, but if they are, if a lot of people come to expect or come to talk about Connect and Beats One, I bet that within a year, Spotify and Google Music will have the same features.
I think there is the question that remains to be answered, and it's something that we can't see for a while, is will Apple Music really be enough to make people switch, but more importantly, to make people start to pay? who are not paying, because that's what they're betting on, right? But will that happen? We don't know. It's going to be interesting to see next week. I expect we'll have a lot more thoughts on next week's episode.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we're actually going to be recording on Wednesday next week, which will give us all time to play around with the service a little bit more, so you can look forward to that.
I just want to make sure that iOS 9 devices will get the music stuff next week. Yeah, that's a problem because, well, I mean, I'll have to reinstall iOS 8 for reasons that I'll explain eventually this weekend anyway. So I think that I don't know if by Wednesday I'll have iOS 8 still. So right now on iOS 9 Beta 2, the music app is still the old music icon. It doesn't look like we'll get the... I don't know. I mean, we could get Apple Music on iOS 9 next week, but with the old icon for the app, maybe. I don't know.
I would expect you won't get Apple Music next week in iOS 9.
Yeah.
That would be my suspicion, because
yeah.
there's not going to be Beta 3 next week of iOS 9.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And it's kind of not important, like, during that period. The public beta will have it, I can assure you. So yeah. Maybe it would change then to maybe Beta 3 or 4 or something. Right, I think that about wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much to Mr. David Smith for joining us. David, where can people find your work online if they would like to do that?
I am at _David Smith on Twitter or developingperspective.com.
Excellent stuff. Thanks again to our sponsors this week, Igloo, Casper, and don't forget to check out App Camp for Girls as well. If you want to find us online, I am at iMyke, IMYKE. Federico is at Viticci, VITICCI, and Federico writes over at MacStories.net. And this week's show notes for episode 45 of Connected can be found at relay.fm/connected/45. And we'll be back next week. Until then, say goodbye, guys.
Arrivederci.
Adios.
Oh, nice.